Go ahead, let's go to the angle. Just do this.
This is good.
So I'm Michael Cassidy,
I'm Jackson Lovegrove.
and we're discussing The Blind Side.
All right. Well, the first question I would like to pose is, all right. Why does truth have such a large impact on our own lives, and if like, why does truth have such a large impact on our lives? And what I thought like a good answer was like throughout our lives we tend to uncover more and more truths about like what's going on in the real world and like what kind of certain things mean. And like I feel like the more of this that we learn about, like the more like depressing our lives could be at times, or like the more things could change. Like maybe for say you've been adopted, you've lived with this family your whole life, and then all of a sudden they tell you that like you're not our real child. Like they could have such a big impact on somebody. But the way that I thought this was connecting to the book is, Big Mike. He had like a really rough childhood, and he had a lot of things go on in his childhood. Like his father was never really around, so he never really had a father figure. And then his mom had been like taken away from rehab several times, and he'd been like forced to live like pretty much by himself or like with different families. And I think that over the course of that like sequence in his life, he like adapted this like brain stage where he like keeps to himself, he doesn't let anybody in, and like he doesn't really trust a lot of people. And I think that makes him like a very closed person, and like it has a big impact on his life, and like those truths that he found out, they really impacted him.
See, now I noticed you were talking about like finding the truth of like how people have it, and how you were talking about how Michael had been adopted, and like he never experienced a family as beautiful as the family that's taking him in the book, in The Blind Side. And it's kind of funny how you were talking about how Michael had such a hard life, because from the book I was reading, a lot of the time I got that like Sean maybe had a realization about like how great he has it, and that's a frequently recognized topic. But I kind of had a question for Michael is, can Michael ever sympathize almost with Sean's problems? Because like I mean, Michael is coming from like a very tough life, no, like we could say like no father almost. Mother had drug problems, and I mean it's kind of it's like it's almost crazy to think about, because it's like when Michael comes into this family, like I mean Sean and the family do have it great, don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
everybody does face problems. And my question is, how does Michael sympathize with these problems, like between the truth, like can he see the truth, because can he see, people have like different visions of truth, and does he believe that it is a truth that everybody faces problems, everybody almost carries their cross, so to say? Can Michael see that within Sean?
Well, what do you think one of the problems that Sean faces? Like what are?
Well, from the book, they don't give many examples of problems they have. I see it has Sean though, kind of. I mean, he does like seem to be very like defensive sometimes. Like he was being interviewed by the NCAA investigator,
Yeah.
and Sean comes in and he's just like, I don't know, like kind of screaming about it. And sometimes that defensiveness that he has, can almost be compared to being paranoid, because a lot of times people who are paranoid get very defensive and argumentative with everybody. And I mean, Sean doesn't have any scarring background that Michael has. My question is, can Michael understand when Sean gets angry? Can Michael understand when Sean gets sad? Because Michael comes into this house that's probably like this for him it would be a mansion. He goes to this private school and gets an education. He like gets a car when he wants to get a car, and it's just like he's getting luxuries that he would never even imagine.
Yeah.
And like, can Michael, when he sees Sean sad, he thinks like, what does Sean have to be sad about? So my question is like, Sean sees the truth as Michael went through a lot, but Sean probably believes it is true that everybody does have sadness or does have struggles in their life. But can Michael see that truth? That's my question. Because whether it's true or not, sometimes the truth can be seen from two different levels.
I think that going back to like something that you said before, like can they like relate to each other's problems and truths? Did you mention that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that one of the main things they could both like relate to and like understand by each other and like their problems and like finding out new truths is, I feel like right now in the stage of the book, they're both like they can be very overwhelming at times. Not themselves personally, but like situations they can be in. Like I find like maybe Sean has to like live up to the expectations of his father, and like he has to like become like a bigger man now that Big Mike is in the house. Like it's a very intimidating figure. But I think that maybe that's what I find like the situation Sean is in. But like Big Mike, like I was talking about before, he's being brought up into this family. Everything's all new for him. Like he's never had support in his life. He's never had like people that been able to like buy him trucks whenever he's wanted and stuff like that. But he's not really like going on to like a little bit different of the subject, but still relating to the problems and truths and stuff. I find that like Mike never really makes his own decisions in life. Like so far in the book, I find that he's sort of been pushed to be like the best he can, like to be like maybe what other people want him to be. Like I don't think it was like really his decision to want to go to this school in the first place, or to like start playing football. But I feel like, or like really to be adopted into this family. I'm sure he had an option to like do that, but like I feel like it's very overwhelming for him, and this has like a substantial impact on like him in his life. But I feel like as like a whole, Sean and Michael, they are both being overwhelmed with new things and problems and truths, and I feel like they can both relate on that level.
I know what you just said though was that you said like Michael's been pushed into doing things, and I thought that was very funny that you said that, because one of the questions I actually asked is like if they give Michael everything they have and they're pushing him to do something that, I mean, I believe that in the book Michael actually ended up liking football and enjoying what he was doing, but like from a hypothetical like essential question standpoint, is it fair to push a kid or a young adult, or like maybe you could say it this way, had Michael not wanted to play football, would it have been fair what the family did?
Mm-hmm.
Because like maybe it's not what Michael wanted. Maybe Michael didn't want the luxuries. Maybe Michael didn't want to get to a private school. Maybe but like the truth is it really fair for them to do this to Michael? Because had Michael not gotten these opportunities, he wouldn't be the place he is today.
Yeah.
So is it fair that for them to push him? Because like we don't know if he could have ended up being killed. We don't know if he could have ended up like
like when one of the first pages in the book, when not one of the first pages, but it's a little ways into the book when they really start like the story of Michael. But one of the first things that they talked about was like involving Big Tony and the new coach. They're talking about like if he wasn't dead already, then he would have been dead because of drugs and other problems. But I find like that relates to what you're saying. And then the other part of the book, when Michael and Sean and the family are talking to the proctor, not the agent of like the family, the family committee. I'm blanking. I think like the purpose that they're serving is to make sure like that's not happening. Like he's not being pushed into these situations. He's not being like doing this for this family alone, but like because he wants to, Like he has a choice in this life that he's like being brought up into. But I find that it's like it's hard for him. I feel like he's definitely like being like guided in a certain direction that this family wants him to go. Like they want him to be part of their family, and I think he does too. But like all these decisions have been like kind of based around like what the bigger picture is like, not just like solely him, which I think it should be.
Yeah, I liked the word you used. You said guided, which I think is almost a better emplacement of a word than pushed than you were using before. I think that guide was a really good word. And now I'm going to go back a little bit too to what you were talking about earlier with the Ken, Michael, and Sean sympathize together and like their connection between one another. And I thought that was funny because I was the one who raised the question: can they sympathize together? Like, can Michael see why he's sad? But besides feeling for each other, like the connection they have, I actually made a comment on this because Michael and like the mom, Sean, they all have such like amazing connection that like the mother can see and like feel Sean's pain and like, Michael's pain. The mother can see, the mother knows what Michael's feeling and like the mother knows what Michael's thinking. The mother knows when something's going on with Michael. And this is like within the first 2 weeks of like, or like the first like 2 months, 2 weeks, or just like right when Michael comes into the family. So like, I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous that like somehow Michael is able to form this connection with the mom, and like the mom's able to see everything that he's feeling, just like right when he comes into the family.
Yeah, I was actually talking about in the last reflection we had to do, but I was kind of thinking about this family brings Mike into their family, their home. They adopt him, and they finally have like they trust him. Like they kind of like seems like he's an extra son, you know. Like they do, but like do they really have the bond that like a real mother and like son would have? Because you know, like when Mike got in that car and he's driving with Sean and he crashes, and they're talking about how like Sean's face was just like destroyed, like it was just like puffed up, and you couldn't really describe like who he was. Like what was the mom thinking? Was she thinking like, oh, was it a wrong choice to bring this like man into my family? Like what is like the situation? How do you think that she would like describe her like choice? Like it just seems a little.
I think she was more concerned about I think she ended up being more concerned about Sean because Sean was the one who was more injured.
Yeah.
But
like, do you think they have any regret of bringing Mike into the family?
I really don't. And you were asking like, can he have the connection that the real family has? And when the mom was watching the football game, the mom could like tell that something was going down with Michael. Like the player was like trash talking him for calling him fat, and like she knew how Michael stood there quietly. She knew that she knew something was going on. So I think that the connection between Michael and the family is like a real family, and it came so quick. So it's like that led me to the next conclusion that like, or question rather, is can things really be meant to be?
Are things really meant to be?
Are there like, I mean, you hear sometimes like people describe things like it was meant to be, but it's just like, I feel like it's a very broad thing, and like I've never really thought about it as much as I have until I began to read this book, because it's like it just seems like it was meant to be. So like it becomes a really deep question. But is there almost some like, maybe I shouldn't like bring religion into this, but maybe is there something in like the human mind that almost like, because like the mind is very powerful. Is there something in the human mind that like makes them do certain things so that something will happen a certain way? Like had Michael's parents not been driving, they wouldn't have seen Michael. So like
Sean's parents.
Yeah, not Michael's parents, but had they not been driving, they wouldn't have seen Michael. So was there something that went off in their head that made them all of a sudden like decide to just drive, and when they happened to be driving, Michael was?
I think that maybe
it's a sixth sense in mind is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that makes
like
things that were meant to be happen, because it just seems like it seems like this went down so well that it almost needed to be meant to be.
I think that you can kind of connect this to beauty and maybe like coincidence a little bit, but when Sean's parents were like driving and they see Big Mike's walking in the rain, he's carrying his like clothes, he's going to the gym, like maybe it's like you can kind of picture like that the mom was just sitting there, she like might have saw something like in her mind, like maybe it was like a flashback or something, like you could really like you kind of like see that she really understood the situation, like she had feelings for this kid, and it's like she instantly cared about him, and like is like really doing the right thing, and like that's where I feel beauty kind of comes into play. It's like not always a visual thing, but like kind of might be a mental thing too.
I know, and it's like it's just amazing because like when you read the book, it's like everything that turned out like if this didn't happen, things would actually be like very different. And I feel as though there almost needs to be things that are like, there needs to be truth behind the phrase meant to be, because it's like, had Michael like left like 5 minutes earlier, they wouldn't have seen these people. Had like the people left 5 minutes earlier, they wouldn't have seen that. It's like everything that like had happened like for such a long time led up to that point, and this just like changed, like even the story itself has changed like multiple people's lives.
Yeah.
And the mother like not only felt this like flashback, but as soon as Michael came into the family, the mom instantly was able to connect to him and feel him as a son, like within 2 weeks of living with him.
Yeah. And
I just think that there's the motherly sense that moms have for their kids, but like the mom instantly grew this sense for Michael. So I really feel like there needs to be truth behind it, and I just think it's really amazing. It's really great.